Support for makers comes from Bank of America and by Cypress Cove.
I feel incredibly fortunate that I was born to parents who only had daughters, and maybe that was part of it, but who believed women could do anything. My mother was an incredibly strong woman, and it was never, ever part of our upbringing that there were things we couldn't do. My graduate work was in anthropology at Cornell, and I was always interested in the relationships of cultures on child rearing practices and what that meant. And so when 2 years of grad school ended, we went in the Peace Corps, my husband and I. We were going to learn about other cultures, and we were very, very lucky to have been sent to Peru. My first assignment was to take over a preschool, so I had a bunch of little 3- and 4-year-old kids in a metal building with a dirt floor and hardly any materials to work with. And I had never taught preschool, but you just sort of do what you did. And we learned little songs, and we cut little pictures out of magazines, and we went for nature walks, and I liked it. In addition, we were community developers, and so the word for community development is you go with what the community say the needs are. And so very shortly after I got there, the women came over and they said, "Señorita, you're married, right?" "Mm-hmm." "You don't have children, right?" I said, "Mm-hmm." "How do you do that?" And that was the beginning of a birth control project that was actually very successful in that little community as well. We missed working with Spanish speakers. We came to Florida sort of as a lark to say we're going to look here as well. And my then husband fell in love with a little community action group in Homestead. And I like to say in those days I was a whither thou go with I. And I went, and I immediately saw this ad for RCMA, went down, fell in love with the kids and the staff, because what's unique about RCMA, and was unique then, is the people that work in the centers are themselves former farm workers. I've been with RCMA for 40 years, and when I came, there were 3 child care centers in the Homestead area. I was the first professional that they hired. I was an education coordinator. The Redlands Christian Migrant Association, which is where the RCMA comes from, stands for the Redlands area of Homestead, which is where we were started. It's what the agricultural community is called. The migrant is because those are the families that we served exclusively when we began. The Christian is interesting. The Mennonites started us, and we like to say the Christian stands for love your neighbor, because they are very big at practicing and less so at preaching. And of course, the association is we're a nonprofit 501c3. Our short mission statement is we open doors to opportunities. And that is not just for the children, but for the staff and for the parents. So I would say I'm proudest of watching the incredible gains. The only hard part as a woman for me, remember, this is education, this is child care, so that is woman's work. So I don't think I had the glass ceiling. It would be the connections and getting the believability and the trust of the agricultural entities, and then the politicians, who really, even to this day, are much more comfortable with men than they are with women. I do think people listen to women differently, and in the lobbying efforts, which we call education, because that's what they are, we have found if we talk to the elected officials from the standpoint of children, from the standpoint of parents, that they're much more likely to listen. I was incredibly lucky to have my mother living with me, which gave me the after-school care that my kids needed. My children say I was a good mother, but you still beat yourself and say, working all those hours, doing all those things, was I really as good a mother as I could have been? I'd like my legacy to Southwest Florida to be a broader understanding of diversity and the richness that it brings to us as an area, as well as a state, as well as a country. I guess I'd like the legacy to be somebody that helped open eyes a little bit to the beauty of diversity and the talents of people, regardless of what they look like or what languages they might speak.
Support for Makers comes from Clive Daniel Home and by Chico's.